Before Bluetooth and streaming won the tech wars, the audio industry was an absolute, lawless Wild West. Engineers were building giant, mechanical monstrosities that looked closer to a space shuttle control panel than a music player. These bizarre, over-engineered experiments completely failed at retail, but they are absolute engineering masterpieces. Let's look at 5 times audio companies went completely mad. If you love exploring forgotten technology and rare electronic history, hit that subscribe button right now. Join the RetroTech Legend community so you never miss another deep dive into the golden age of tech. Number 5. The Seeburg Discotheque. We begin our journey into madness in the early 1970s with a machine designed for people who hated changing records so much they wanted a literal factory robot inside their living room. Meet the Seeburg Discotheque, specifically the home console versions. Long before the compact disc or digital playlists existed, if you wanted continuous music at a party, you were stuck flipping vinyl records every 20 minutes. The engineers at Seeburg looked at this problem and decided that instead of making records easier to handle, they would build a massive, heavy metal storage vault that automated the entire process. Inside this giant wooden cabinet sat a massive horizontal mechanism holding up to 60 7-inch vinyl records stacked vertically in a row, like plates in a dish rack. When you pressed a mechanical button on the control panel, a heavy electric motor engaged, sliding a massive playback carriage along a metal rail. The carriage would stop perfectly in front of the selected record. A mechanical arm would clamp the vinyl, and a dual stylus tone arm would play the record vertically. The engineering precision required to keep a stylus tracking perfectly inside a vertical groove without jumping or destroying the vinyl in 1971 was nothing short of miraculous. It relied entirely on complex, spring-tensioned counterweights and perfectly machined gears. No microchips, no sensors, just raw, physical physics. But this mechanical marvel came with an astronomical penalty. In 1971, a Seeburg home automation stereo system cost around $2,500. When adjusted for modern inflation, that is an unbelievable $19,000 today. For the price of a brand new compact car, you got a massive piece of furniture that weighed over 150 kilograms and contained thousands of moving parts just waiting to jam and shred your favorite albums. Unsurprisingly, wealthy consumers realized that paying a human being to manually flip records was significantly cheaper and far less likely to cause a mechanical fire. The system completely bombed in the consumer market, making it one of the rarest, heaviest, and most terrifyingly complex anomalies in home audio history. Number 4. The Tefifon T5. Next up is a device that answers a question absolutely nobody asked. What happens if you cross a vinyl record with a cassette tape? The answer is the German-engineered Tefifon. And while it saw its peak production run extend slightly into the early 1960s, it survived deep into the 1970s as a bizarre cult phenomenon that defied all standard logic of music formats. To understand the Tefifon, you have to completely wipe your mind of magnetic tape. Inside these massive, heavy plastic cartridges is a continuous loop of durable vinyl tape. But instead of carrying a magnetic coating, the engineers literally engraved standard vinyl record grooves directly onto the surface of the plastic band. When you pushed the massive cartridge into the player, a mechanical tracking wheel guided a standard sapphire phonograph needle directly onto the moving plastic ribbon. The tape loop inside was up to 30 meters long, allowing a single cartridge to play up to 4 hours of continuous music without a single interruption. Imagine having a 4-hour playlist in 1970 with absolutely no digital tech. It was an engineering triumph. The sound was surprisingly clean, and the format was virtually indestructible compared to fragile, scratch-prone vinyl discs. But the business execution was an absolute disaster. The company that invented the format, Tefifon, refused to license the manufacturing technology to major international record labels. If you wanted to listen to the latest rock music or pop hits, you couldn't buy them on a Tefifon cartridge. You could only buy music recorded by Tefi's obscure, in-house German orchestra and cover bands. In the mid-1970s, a complete playback system cost the equivalent of around 400 Deutsche Marks, which translates to roughly $1,200 today. While the price wasn't completely insane compared to high-end turntables, the complete lack of mainstream music meant consumers were paying premium money to listen to generic elevator music and German military marches. When the compact cassette tape exploded in popularity globally, offering the ability to actually record your own music from the radio, the Tefifon instantly became a useless, archaic piece of plastic junk. Today, finding a working unit with undegraded vinyl tape is the ultimate prize for collectors of the truly bizarre. Number 3. The Panasonic RS845S car radar. In the mid-1970s, Panasonic looked at the growing car audio market and decided that regular music wasn't exciting enough. Drivers needed theater-quality sound on the highway. This led to the creation of the Panasonic RS845S, a quadraphonic 8-track player designed exclusively for automotive use. For the younger viewers, 8-track cartridges were already a highly problematic format. They used a continuous loop of magnetic tape that constantly rubbed against itself, leading to high friction, frequent jamming, and a distinct lack of audio fidelity. But Panasonic didn't just want to play standard stereo 8-tracks, they wanted to implement discrete 4-channel quadraphonic sound inside a moving vehicle. This meant the player required 4 independent amplifier circuits crammed inside a metal chassis small enough to mount under a passenger dashboard, running entirely off a volatile 12-volt car battery system. To adjust the sound, the unit featured an array of heavy slide controls and a literal joystick in the center of the console, allowing the driver to manually position the music balance between the front left, front right, rear left, and rear right speakers. Trying to safely adjust a physical joystick to balance a quadraphonic audio field while driving a 1975 Cadillac down a highway at 70 miles per hour was an absolute safety nightmare. Furthermore, the heat generated by 4 analog amplifiers running packed tightly inside a small metal enclosure under a dashboard was immense. It was not uncommon for the unit to become hot enough to literally melt the plastic casings of the 8-track tapes inserted inside it. When released, this premium mobile setup cost nearly $350, which sounds modest until you calculate inflation. That is over $2,100 in today's money just for a car tape player, not including the cost of installing 4 premium speakers throughout the vehicle cabin. Because quadraphonic 8-tracks were incredibly expensive to manufacture and regular stereo cassette players were rapidly becoming smaller, cooler, and more reliable, Panasonic's mobile theater dream crashed and burned within a few short years. It remains a legendary example of over-engineering a bad format to its absolute structural limit. Number 2. The Sony MX950 Pro Mixer unboxing. As we enter the late 1970s, the consumer audio market experienced a massive craze, the prosumer movement. Regular music listeners decided they no longer wanted their home stereo equipment to look like consumer appliances. They wanted them to look like professional recording studios. Sony capitalized on this trend by releasing the Sony MX950, a battery-powered 6-channel portable field mixer built like a military tank. Look at the sheer layout of this machine. No plastic sliders, no digital screens. Every single channel features heavy,
knurled aluminum knobs that rotate with a perfectly dampened hydraulic resistance. The chassis is constructed entirely of die-cast metal and brushed aluminum plate, designed to withstand being thrown into the back of a broadcast truck or used in torrential rain during an outdoor news report. The absolute insanity of the MX950 lies in its target market. Sony marketed this highly complex, professional-grade mixing console to average audiophiles who just wanted to connect their home open-reel tape decks and microphones in their living rooms. It featured full professional microphone preamplifiers, individual channel attenuation switches, and massive analog VU meters that responded instantly to signal peaks with mechanical precision. To achieve this level of studio performance without relying on noisy AC power lines, the MX950 could run entirely on a massive bank of internal batteries. The electronic circuitry inside used hand-selected low-noise transistors and military-grade capacitors soldered onto thick, high-quality circuit boards. The reliability was so absolute that many of these units still measure perfectly today without ever having a single component replaced. But this level of uncompromised Japanese engineering came with a devastating retail price tag. In 1978, the MX950 retailed for approximately $1,000. In today's currency, that equates to a shocking $4,800. Consumers quickly realized that while having a military-grade recording mixer in their living room looked incredibly cool, they didn't actually need 6 independent microphone inputs just to listen to a vinyl record. Most units were relegated to professional film sets or broadcast stations, while the consumer versions sat unsold on showroom shelves.
Number 1. The Elcaset Revolution. And finally, we arrive at the absolute king of 1970s audio madness, a format that was supposed to completely destroy the vinyl record and the compact cassette, but instead became the most expensive, tragic failure in tech history. This is the Elcaset system, developed jointly by Sony, Panasonic, and Teak in 1976. In the mid-70s, audiophiles faced a massive dilemma. The standard compact cassette, invented by Philips, was incredibly small and convenient, but the tape inside was too narrow and traveled too slowly to deliver true high-fidelity sound. If you wanted perfect audio, you were forced to use giant, heavy, complicated open-reel tape decks that required manually threading magnetic tape through a maze of rollers. The engineering solution was simple, but completely insane. Take the thick, high-quality quarter-inch magnetic tape from a professional open-reel deck, run it at double the speed of a standard cassette, and seal the entire mechanism inside a massive, giant plastic shell. The result was the Elcaset cartridge. When you pushed this giant tape into a machine like the Sony EL7, a highly complex mechanical system of levers would reach inside the plastic shell, physically pull the magnetic tape completely out of the cartridge, and loop it around a massive internal capstan and dual flywheel transport system. It combined the absolute studio-grade audio quality of a massive open reel deck with the push-button convenience of a cassette. The sound quality was absolutely breathtaking. Frequency response went all the way up to 25,000 Hz, with a dynamic range that blew every other consumer format out of the water. The machines were overbuilt masterpieces, weighing over 15 kilograms and using massive direct drive motors. But the timing was a complete catastrophe. Just as Elcaset launched, regular compact cassette technology made a massive technological leap forward. Manufacturers invented chrome and metal tape formulations, allowing cheap, standard cassettes to sound almost as good as the giant Elcaset for a fraction of the price. An Elcaset deck cost upwards of $900 in 1976, which is an incredible $4,900 today, and a single blank tape cost more than an entire album on vinyl.
Consumers looked at the massive size, the extreme price tag, and decided they were perfectly happy with their cheap, convenient, standard cassettes. The format died so quickly that Sony was left with tens of thousands of unsold machines in their warehouses. In a desperate move, they eventually sold the entire remaining stock to a clearance house in Finland, where they were sold off to unsuspecting European buyers at dirt cheap prices. It is the ultimate testament to what happens when brilliant engineering completely ignores market reality. The 1970s proved that when engineers are given unlimited budgets, they build absolute magic, even if nobody buys it. Which of these mechanical monsters would you actually want in your listening room today? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Leave a like if you enjoyed this journey into retro tech, and subscribe to RetroTech Legend for more forgotten electronic history. See you in the next deep dive.